Why did a billion-dollar dream hotel die before it ever broke ground? And how did that failure end up changing Disneyland's future forever? Ricky here, explaining all of the drama, conflict, and misery behind the proposed luxury hotel that was going to be built right where I'm standing to get canceled on the day the bulldozers were scheduled to show up, and how we all ended up better by this project falling apart. Before we get started on today's video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, where you know what we do here. We study Disneyland's past. That's what we're doing today, so we can better predict its future. And this story, this is the prequel to Disneyland Forward. Thank you so much for subscribing. I'm so excited you showed up. In 2017, Anaheim rolled out a major incentive trying to encourage companies to build luxury hotels in their city, allowing them to keep 70% of the hotel taxes for 20 years. It was meant to lure in the Hiltons, Marriotts, Four Seasons, but here's a little twist the city of Anaheim didn't see coming. In the 11th hour, Disney swooped in and grabbed the deal for themselves, which upset the city of Anaheim because, you see, they were trying to lure in more developers to bring larger scale businesses to Anaheim, thinking that the more upscale businesses you have, the more upscale clients you get, and the more tax base that will be paid into the city. They weren't envisioning that their biggest partner would use this incentive to fatten their own margins. And I honestly don't think that Disney was even thinking about a hotel at the time. But they saw this opportunity and knew it would never be cheaper to build a fourth and probably final hotel on the Disneyland Resort. May we not forget, the hotel guest is the most lucrative guest. You have a captive audience that is spending nearly all of their money at the resort, and they're also spending money for lodging. That is something that local guests aren't doing. And from Disney's perspective, it was opportunistic, a little predatory, but Anaheim couldn't say no. They had been caught offering something to lure in more business and just got more of the same. And I think a lot of business owners know what it's like when you're trying to do something large scale and then you kind of get burnt by the business you already have. When you're wanting to grow and you stay where you're already at, it feels a little demeaning. What made this announcement even more confusing is that the hotel wouldn't be done till 2021. In 2019, Disney was launching Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which would be Disneyland's biggest theme park expansion. And at the time, people thought it was literally going to make people flood into the park. Now, we all know that that didn't exactly happen, but in this timeline, people were like, so they're building a ginormous hotel for future growth, but it's going to show up after the first 2 years when the land is in its absolute highest demand. The timeline just pushed over to more so of Disney trying to cash in what they saw as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When fans looked at the design, they also sensed something that made it not feel so Disney, like this had been a rush job for the opportunity on the horizon and not something that they had put a tremendous amount of long-term planning and strategy in, which is what they're famously known for. But Disney's spin to get everybody excited is they announced this as the first new Disneyland hotel in 20 years, full of 700 rooms and a monorail going through the lobby, as well as a dining area that would give fans an unbelievable way to experience the Disneyland nighttime fireworks show. And eventually, Anaheim would begin hyping it too, thinking of hundreds or thousands of construction jobs, thousands of permanent jobs thereafter, and getting $25 million in new taxes for the city. But there were still some City of Anaheim officials that felt like bait for outsiders was hijacked by insiders. And this set the stage for a messy breakup with Disney. Meanwhile, while Anaheim and Disney were shaking hands, bulldozers were already being lined up in downtown Disney. Disney's opportunistic nature to jump on this opportunity is getting ready to set up a giant trap that it will take the company years to navigate their way back out of. What makes this story to me and a lot of fans so crazy is that the ink was barely dry on the deal when Disney started clearing space for their new hotel. They really got ahead of what was coming next. And in the end, that had so much to do with how this story turns out. Right around here is where the huge AMC theater used to sit. And if you remember, it was awesome to go see like Marvel content and then just go right to Mission Breakout after already seeing Guardians on the big screen. But the movie theater completely gone and would sit that way for a long time. Rainforest Café, ESPN Zone, completely wiped out right away. There were a couple that would hang on for a while, but eventually every door would get closed. And there was one other door that got closed, but it got reopened because eventually, after whatever happens to our great society, there will be two things left at Disneyland: cockroaches and Earl of Sandwich. Earl's prestigious, nice corner space shut its doors, but would be the only tenant to close and reopen. And since then, they have taken Disney's real estate scraps, but that might be paying off because they have a new forever home. Yay, Earl got adopted. Other locations would be able to hold on for a while. If you recall, right here on this corner, this is where the second downtown Disney Starbucks would reside. Next door was a local merchant. They had a little bit of a longer lifespan, but eventually everything in downtown Disney on the western end would completely get closed, making for a very odd experience because guests were wondering, what now? Because I don't think that I'm over-exaggerating when I say most fans weren't excited about this new hotel that was coming. The design looked so big and chaotic, a lot probably assumed, yeah, this isn't gonna happen. But when everything right where I'm standing shut its doors and went into a state of abandonment, fans knew, oh no, this really is happening. And there was not a, yeah, this is gonna be awesome energy in the resort. There was actually fan dread that I don't want this to show up. I don't like this design. I'm not excited about this. It was not met with the usual open arms that Disney can do no wrong. Most fans thought this was the wrong decision. Lots of families lost some of their favorite activities to do outside of the park. Restaurants they like to dine at, going to see the movies on their off day or travel day. It instantly changed the way that downtown Disney felt. And it also created a weird feeling of when you finally got to Disneyland to kick off your vacation or your trip, you were instantly greeted with a ghost town. And not the cool type of ghost town they have down the street at Knott's, a bizarre corporate America induced ghost town. But Disney had gone all in. They had gutted downtown Disney, got rid of long-term tenants and lucrative real estate deals for a luxury dream. To quote the great Mr. Burns, when Homer Simpson said, "Gee, Mr. Burns, it seems like you have everything." And his response, "Oh yes, but I'd trade it all in for a little bit more." Most fans diminished the design as bland, but hidden inside this hotel, the plan was surprisingly clever problem solving. Let me show you what could have been and how this hotel actually did have a through line of Disney magic hidden well inside of its design. And let me tell you why most fans' instincts were absolutely right when they said this hotel doesn't feel like Disney. The fans, you can't fool them. The hotel that would essentially have started on the monorail tracks directly behind me wasn't designed by Disney at all. I believe to make the tax incentive work for Disney, they jumped on this opportunity so quickly that Walt Disney Imagineering and their internal design teams just didn't have the room to take off a project at this scale. So what did they do? They went to an outside company to have them design this on behalf of Disney. They used a company by the name of Marnell, who does a lot of Las Vegas hotel design. And if you think about it, Las Vegas hotel design and Disney theme park hotel design, probably not too different, but different enough that the fans picked up that it didn't feel uniquely Disney. And that instinct was absolutely right. And honestly, that pushback could have a reason why Disney didn't put up much of a fight as this deal starts to fall apart. But one of the magic tricks that this hotel did quite efficiently is it solved a bit of a problem. It took lots of little fragmented parcels of land all around the western end of the Disneyland Resort, and it created a unified footprint, of 4 separate towers that would bring in a cohesive fan experience and do something that had never been done before. Actually create a through line that would tie together all of the separate Disney hotels with an amazing greenbelt walk space full of all kinds of beautiful landscaping. Guests would be able to go from hotel to hotel, and other than crossing Disneyland Drive, have a seamless Disney experience. That doesn't exist today, and I don't think it ever will without this hotel being built. Another magic trick that it was going to pull off is that its ground floor would be the 3rd floor, and that was decided upon so that the ground floor could perfectly align with the monorail and the monorail platform. The lobby would be literally right where I'm standing, making the monorail once again fully part of a Disneyland hotel experience, where the monorail would become an extension of the hotel's lobby. Now, I'm not saying that we would see something as magical as what they have at the Contemporary at Walt Disney World, but in the smaller, more compact footprint of Disneyland, this would have elevated the monorail and the guest experience to a level of design that, quite frankly, is missing here at home in Disneyland. Also, this 3rd floor, which would have been right here, would have housed pools and had all kinds of different hotel guest amenities, which means what's happening on the floors below. This area of downtown Disney that would be below the new hotel would be the home to a newly developed 68,000 square foot of retail space that would have housed entertainment, dining, and shopping. All here, but sitting underneath the hotel, where guests would stay in 700 rooms above the downtown Disney guest. And in many ways, this multi-use zoning is an early indication of where this story is going and where the company's mindset was going with Disneyland Forward. But we'll get to that towards the end of today's story. And then in the tower that would be right here behind me, this tower on the 7th floor would have an amazing vista that would look out into Disneyland, where guests could have a rooftop experience at a lounge watching the nightly fireworks. This is something that you knew that Disney was going to captivate on, and even though there are views from the Disneyland Hotel, I do believe how this was going to be pushed out a little bit further would put it more in line with the firework view. Probably not as good as what you get on the top of Mickey and Friends, but still a pretty good view. So what would go wrong with 700 hotel rooms divided over 4 towers and 8 stories, covering 31 acres and adding over 2,200 new parking spaces to the Disneyland Resort and the city of Anaheim? Wait for it, it goes epically wrong. Fans dodged the bullet of not having a massive, bland structure built on the western end of downtown Disney, but I do believe there were going to be some experiences here that fans would have loved. So I'm not saying that the whole thing would have been a disaster. There were some ups, but there was also noticeably some downs. But good, bad, or indifferent, none of that mattered, because Disney and Anaheim were about to go to war. And the fight wasn't over the design, it was over the politics. If corporate greed and greed from the city is what brought us to this moment, it's what's getting ready to undo all of this. Disney had cleared downtown Disney, unveiled concept art, locked a tax deal, and yet the entire project is getting ready to collapse. Whenever you have a tiff for tat between a mega corporation and a city, you know there's going to be 2 sides of the story, and the truth is going to lie somewhere in between. One of Anaheim's reasons why this deal fell apart is they claimed that Disney had moved the project 1,000 feet south, and that had voided the deal. And that all happened because of another little fight. Let me backtrack and explain why contentiousness is happening as Disney has the bulldozers on the way to this project. You see, when Disney showed their original concept for an Eastern Gateway project, the idea was to put a parking garage on the east side of the resort, sitting on the east side of Harbor Boulevard. Then guests would take a sky bridge over Harbor Boulevard and end up in the Esplanade. Not too different than the plan that we saw them unveil just a few months ago. But Eastern Gateway 1.0 had one crucial error. Disney was accused of taking all of its guests and having them surpass all of the merchants on Harbor Boulevard. And all of the businesses along Harbor that rely on Disney guests as part of their customer base were rightfully so pretty bummed out. This created a wave in Anaheim that Disney was officially overstepping its boundaries. It was getting too big for its britches. So there were some members of the city council that wanted to push back and saw denying them the tax credit that they didn't initially want them to receive anyway as a great way to teach the House of Mouse a valuable lesson. But Disney's side of this story is, well, you didn't let us build the parking garage over on the eastern side of the resort, so we're moving the hotel just 1,000 feet so we can add in a parking garage on the western side. Pretty sensible. Anaheim played up this movement and basically made 1,000 feet sound like Disneyland was moving the resort to Las Vegas. But when Disney got upset, they did start flirting with a different city. And Disney pulled the old school move, once again proving that the rules of business aren't too different than the rules of dating, and they started flirting with another girl behind their girlfriend's back. That's right, they said, "What's up, Garden Grove? Maybe you would like a Disney resort in your city." Nothing ever came of this. It was obviously just posturing, but it goes to show that each side was really getting into that petty, bureaucratic bullshit that drives regular folks like us absolutely crazy. And of course, what would a good drama be without fan speculation? After all, that's what we do the best, and I might be one of the biggest speculators in the bunch. Fans started to put together, as you may recall, in the opening days of the Disneyland Hotel, there was a Richfield service station on premises. Fans put two and two together. If the brownfield left behind from the tanks that weren't properly disposed of and were just buried over, that would create a whole loophole Disney and Anaheim would have to work around to build a hotel here. And this is when everybody's looking to blame somebody else other than Anaheim or Disney. People love to blame California. Oh, it's impossible to build anything here. Has the fourth largest economy in the world. But obviously, I'm trying to make light of all of these politics and tell you a very complex back and forth story as short and as friendly as possible. But there was one part of the story that I wouldn't be a good friend to all the beautiful cast members if I didn't tell this part the way that it was told to me and as best as I could research it for this video. You see, the city of Anaheim really wanted to fight back to Disney, feeling like Disney was pulling a fast one on them. So they wanted to hit Disney where it would hurt the most. And whoever came up with this plan, they nailed it. They could look at Disney and know this is the thing that they won't want to back down on. And that was a little thing called Measure L, where any corporation that would take these tax subsidies would then be required to give their workers a living wage. At the time, this was $18 an hour. Disney obviously did the math and realized with their workforce, bringing everybody up to a living wage would cost so much money in the short and long term that the hotel was no longer a deal. And that is a pretty gross look. And as reported by the OC Register, it was Josh D'Amaro that would send in the letter saying, we no longer need these subsidies. So do the math where you will, but Disney quickly calculated bringing all of their employees up to a living wage was not in the corporation's best financial interest. So yeah, no corporation is perfect. And that's kind of a down part of the story that I wanted to kind of pause and tell as simplified as I could. October 10th, 2018, the plan for the hotel became officially dead. And Anaheim and Disney both blamed various different conditions. As per usual, no one was looking to do that thing called accountability. At this moment in the story, let's do the math. Nobody's winning. Because both sides played games, Anaheim looks incredibly petty, turning away the money they would have made from Disney, Disney looks incredibly greedy, and the poor employees that are the people that actually make the magic aren't getting a raise through any of this. Every single person lost in this scenario when every side started playing the blame game. But something odd would bring everyone back together and place them on the same page, because there is a through line through all of these failures. Let me explain how this low point in Disney, the unions, and the city of Anaheim rallied together to make the thing that most fans are the most excited about. But in an odd twist of fate, all of this pettiness would stitch together an unbelievable opportunity that would push Anaheim and the Disneyland Resort forward. See what I did there? So on paper, obviously, this cancellation looked like a disaster, but in reality, it created Disney's biggest opportunity in decades. Let me explain. Disney had kind of already done part of the hard work. With the hotel site completely cleared, it now gave them an empty footprint to dream a different future inside of. So in a weird twist of fate, trying to jump on a tax incentive before it expired, abandoning a lot of their different tenants, put them in a position now where before they didn't have to do anything. But because of their decision motivated by greed, they now had to fix the western end of downtown Disney, because now they had to make a move. So if the hotel would have been built, that land would have been that hotel till the end of time. That plan would have eaten up the parcels of land that are now earmarked for Disneyland Forward. There would have been a way to do a modest addition to California Adventure in Disneyland, but such a small expansion, you would really wonder if the accountants would justify it, because it would have been an immense amount of money, time, and infrastructure for maybe at most a mini land for each park. Probably wouldn't have bid on that opportunity. But as we've all seen from their plans, they're envisioning either a significant expansion to each park, and as some fans believe, possibly even a standalone park in this spot. So at the time, what felt like a real waste of energy and resources actually had become fuel for the future. Because would any of this have happened if Disney didn't try to jump on that tax incentive? That motivated their decision, and then that ultimately would motivate them having to solve the problem that they had self-initiated. So in a weird way, the collapse wasn't the end, it became the beginning, and the beginning of something so much bigger, so much more optimistic, that I think fans are excited about what's coming next, and most fans were not excited about what was coming back then. This has definitely changed the perspective, the momentum of not only the fans, but the corporation and the city that it now has a strong partnership with once again. So how exactly did Disney and Anaheim go from their ugliest breakup to partners in Disneyland Forward? That answer comes with the most unexpected twist that nobody was predicting in 2018 when this plan fell apart. Let me explain how the worst of times can bring out the best in us. If we're looking at this as a story, absolutely the low point is the hotel deal collapsing. But I would like to tell you that that collapse sets up an amazing story arc for the path to redemption. This deal fell through because people that worked for the city of Anaheim and elected officials had the idea that they were being bullied by Disney. This deal also fell through because Disney was maybe and honestly overstepping some of its boundaries and maybe trying to take a little bit too much of its slice of the Anaheim pie. Bad metaphor? Neither side knowing that just in a couple of years, they would each understand what it would be like to not have the other for 440 days when Disneyland was forced to close for the 2020 global pandemic. This taught each side a very valuable lesson, because through the time of the shutdown, Disney moved forward with the plan called Disneyland Forward, basically to work with the city of Anaheim on how the two could grow together. Disney would ask for flexible zoning rights and in return invest a lot of money into the city's infrastructure. Low-income housing, investment in city offerings such as parks and community spaces. Disney and Anaheim this time would work together for a mutually beneficial future, each knowing now how much they needed the other. Which I think brings us to a golden lesson learned in the overall Disney story. Sometimes things don't go the way that you want them to, but things go the way that they're supposed to. With what we'll see happening next, I don't think anybody would argue this deal falling apart was a great happy accident. Just like when the city of Burbank told Walt Disney they were not interested in him building a theme park on the studio lot. Look how that worked out for everybody when Burbank said no. And really, how different is the Disney story from our own stories? Sometimes the tragedy isn't in no. The no is what makes a better yes possible. The only tragedy is when we let no define us and we give up. Anaheim or Disney didn't give up, and everybody will be rewarded, therefore, in the end. But of course, there is one of life's little ironies in the fact that it took a global pandemic for Disneyland and Anaheim to realize that they needed each other. Whatever it takes to get the job done, right? So yes, Disneyland's canceled hotel may have looked like a dead end, but watch this video over here to see where this plan comes back to life with the advent of the Eastern Gateway, which will start next year as Disneyland Forward officially kicks off. I'm Bricky, thank you for watching. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Hope it was worth it.